also what we're trying to do desperately at that is when hundreds of citizens of Ujjain turn their back on this young child, some of them shooing her away, and it's very evident on CCTV. There were this clutch of sadhus, and one of them in particular, who covered this young child in a blanket, took her to a hospital. The police came in, and it's something that should be told, because the policemen who took this young child to the hospital were the ones who donated blood for this young girl, because there was no immediate family, nobody knew where she came from, and not lauded, but at least spoken of, because we are trying very hard to look for that sadhu. We haven't been able to, but in the sea of what we call inhumanity, there are a few good men and women, and their story must be recorded and told. I want to cut across immediately to Lalita Kumara Mangalam, former chairperson, NCW. Ma'am, once again, I want to just, this case is heartbreaking to say the least. A 12-year-old child for 7 hours roams the streets of a city desperately seeking help. Every day, it seems as a collective, we cross another threshold of being inhuman.
I agree. It's sickening that, this is supposed to be Mahakal country, Ujjain, where it's holy land for many people in this country. And in this land, if we have this sort of inhumanity, this sort of terrible, terrible human beings, I mean, for want of another word, human beings, where is their humanity? This is not the fault of any politician or any party. I just don't want to politicize this. As a country today, we really should be ashamed that we turned away a 12-year-old child who could well have been, somebody we know, somebody related to us. When you see her literally bleeding alone, begging for help, how can anybody be so inhuman as to turn her away? I'm sure people will say, oh, we were afraid of the police and all that sort of nonsense excuses. But we Indians have become spineless and heartless. It's very easy to always blame the other side. The judges, the police, the everybody, as we say, everybody is blamed. We will never take responsibility and never even say sorry. I'm sure any one of those scores of people who turned this poor child away, who committed that sin, and I mean a really horrible sin, one of the darkest sins anybody can commit, will say that, oh, we didn't want to get involved. This whole thing about not wanting to get involved, what is this? They could have called the police if they did not want to get involved. They could have called an ambulance. I'm sure they would have if it had been one of their own people they knew or loved or whatever. Somebody, a teacher, a relative, a friend, whatever, or even a big film star for that matter, somebody whom, they thought they would get publicity from. But otherwise, why don't we even care? This is the depth of patriarchy. If this had been a young boy, I'm willing to, change my name. If everybody had treated that little boy the way they treated this little girl. Even today, this is the acid depths of patriarchy that young girls face over and over and over again. And hats off to that gentleman, the sadhu, who has done this without even asking for credit. God bless him. Hats off also to the policemen who donated blood. There are, as you say, there are good and bad. But in this case, it is not, the people who are in governance, the police, etc., who have been wrong. It is the people, the common man, who is terribly, terribly wrong. And they should really feel ashamed.
You're right there. We were trying to get the policeman as well who donated the blood, practically saving this young child's life. The sadhu, he was on the move, but, God bless him. But yes. I want to come back. I want to come back with a question, ma'am, because yes, we can keep talking about that it's about the people. Yes, it is about the people. But, and hopefully I'm going to take you away from party affiliation here. Somewhere down the line, cases like this, Ms. Kumara Mangalam, become primarily of your state, your rapes against my state, my rapes. Yes. If you put it out there, the map, Madhya Pradesh is number 2 on the crime list where crime against women are concerned. So yes, if we talk about Rajasthan and the crime against women, Madhya Pradesh is really not far. And someone really needs to look at it from that perspective and maybe work towards that.
I agree. That is a different question altogether, which you're talking about. But I agree with and I totally understand the point you're making, that states, especially where abuse against women, not just rape, any form of abuse against women, whether it's dowry, whether it's child marriage, whether it is sexual abuse, whether it is abuse in the workplace, etc., they need to seriously introspect, regardless of which party may be in power, BJP, Congress, JDU, whatever, in the South, DMK, YSR, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. They need to introspect, and they need to really come out with some very strict adherence to the law. The problem here also is most people don't know the law and are not afraid of the law. I have relatives who practice in the posh field, and they will tell you that big companies who are willing to take up cases are not able to find people who will come forward to give evidence. The law is based on evidence. And
True.
Evidence is something that Indians seem to balk. We just don't want to come forward and give evidence. We always want to be the good person. We don't want to come and point the finger at somebody who's actually the criminal. And this is across the board. It has nothing to do with, I think, state or money or education. It's a mindset that we need to get out of. It's one of the things that helps patriarchy, or rather literally, gives it such a big boost, because men know they will get away with it. And but again, as per the data, whichever state has data that shows that it doesn't matter if it's high or low, rape is rape, regardless.
And thank you for saying that.
With very, very strictly.
Thank you.
I have said this before openly. When Bill Kismanu's rapists were given bail, I was the only one who said that it's wrong. It doesn't matter.
Thank you for saying that. There are very few people who can actually move beyond party affiliation and say that, and thank you for saying that. Appreciate you taking the time out and joining us. Thank you. Ms. Lalita Kumara Mangalam, former NCW chairperson. Vikram Singh, Brinda Adige, I want to bring you in on this conversation. Vikram Singh, whatever it might seem to suggest, but are we now at a place where maybe we should contemplate action against those who turn away from someone who is in desperate help?
Preeti, you said it. There are those who looked away and looked the other way. They did not go and attend to the call of their conscience. This incident is sufficient to bleed anybody's heart at any point of time. But yes, all those onlookers and the silent bystander had a moral and a legal duty to perform, which they failed to do. And therefore, to your point, I would say, yes, a responsibility has to be fixed. Those who are oblivious of such human tragedies, they need to answer. They are living in a country where people pay taxes to ensure an ecosystem of safety, security, and honor. And if they choose to be silent and mute bystanders, to the contrary, in a way, abetting this kind of a crime, there should be consequences for such silent and mute spectators. Indeed, you rightly said that there are so many of us who would rather keep away from going to the police. What does it require, Preeti? Just call a few numbers, the local numbers, the helplines, the 100 numbers, 1090, any number of helplines. But it is a different matter to have a helpline, and it's a different matter to address that helpline. What it requires is just a simple phone call. That was about all.
Right.
Nothing more was required. But yes, there should be consequences for those who are silent and mute spectators to this human tragedy.
And I hope somebody's thinking about that. But Brinda Adige, I want to bring you in on this. Let's go back. Ultimately, it comes down to one basic line, Brinda Adige, that Jyoti Singh died, unremembered, Nirbhaya for politicians lives on.
Absolutely right, Padmaja. While I agree...
Preeti, ma'am.
Sorry, Preeti. My apologies. Preeti, while I agree with both the other panelists who spoke up, we need to address the matter at the spot of what is the state administration doing. If you recall, Madhya Pradesh was almost one of the first states to announce, the chief minister announced that any kind of rape or assault on anybody 12 years and below will attract very stringent punishment. Now, to date, we haven't seen what has happened to that kind of a promise that was made by the chief minister, because you mentioned, Preeti, that Madhya Pradesh has the highest number of cases registered on issues of sexual assault and rape. So the state administration has to answer.
Second highest, ma'am. Second highest, not the highest.
Okay, second highest. Why is it that there is no fear of law? Because the numbers keep increasing every year. Why is there no fear of law? Why is it that perpetrators and rapists assume that they will not be caught or they will not be punished appropriately? So the blame lies with the police, the prosecution, and the judiciary, and we must call for a reform, because you and I know that the colonial system of functioning continues where the witness is put to task much more than the perpetrator. And probably that might be one of the reasons where people don't call up the helpline. But that said, our consciousness, our responsibility, our civic responsibility is at stake today. It is scary that a child had to walk 7 kilometers and nobody even made a telephone call, even to call the ambulance. Forget the police. People may be afraid of the police, but call the ambulance. That also shows what my state or the state of Ujjain, of Madhya Pradesh and the city of Ujjain is
You're right
so
there, Mr. Dighe, but ultimately
that they don't hold themselves responsible.
Right, but Mr. Dighe, but today is also a day where instead of pointing fingers at politicians, instead of pointing fingers at the police, maybe one needs to look into the mirror and be ashamed. It's a day to be ashamed. And one thing I would reckon as we go into this break, that for those who turn this child away, God alone, I hope you never sleep at night. And right in the beginning, like we pointed out, those clutch of men, the few good men there in the sea of inhumanity, what did we see? A sadhu who wrapped this young child in a blanket and took her to the hospital. The police who came there gave her blood for the reason of survival.